In the year 2008, in the United States alone, over 1,437,000 people will be diagnosed with cancer. You, one of your family members or a friend, may be one of them. If so, you could find yourself visiting a cancer center like the one behind me. Terrifying at its best, a diagnosis of cancer is definitely a life-changing experience. But come with me now through the lives of other people that have been diagnosed with cancer and have found their courage, strength, and support in a variety of means. There are some stories that just have to be told. Wings of Eagles is one such story.
I don't know.
It was a cold autumn day in the year 2008 when I first sat down in my office to read the story of Georgia Alvarez and her son Joseph. She said, "I will never forget this as long as I live, even though I wish I could." We sat down side by side, Alberta and I, facing the intern, holding hands. She started off with the words, "I'm sorry, but..." That's all I needed to hear. Tears started rolling down my face and they didn't stop for 3 days. She went on to tell us that there was no mistake, that Joseph had leukemia. Well, I cried, and I cried. I kept telling her over and over, "Not Joseph. Please, not Joseph. It could be anyone else in the world, but not Joseph." I just kept crying out to her, not hearing her words. I stopped holding Alberta's hand and just hung my face, looking at my lap. We ended our talk and I followed the doctor out of the room. Walking faster and faster down the hall toward the elevator, my husband passed me. Riding down the elevator, I don't even remember looking up. I remember looking at my shoes. As soon as those elevator doors opened, my husband dashed out and almost ran to the doors that led out of the hospital. With blurred vision, I caught up to him and put my hand on his shoulder and witnessed something I had never seen before in all the years of our marriage. My husband, this big, strapping man who I thought was invincible, was crying. I started comforting him, forgetting my own heartache. But the agony and despair in my husband's face told the story of how he felt. He felt punished. He felt burdened. He felt betrayed. Almost 2 decades later, Georgia Alvarez will now tell you the story of her son Joseph and the foundation that began in honor of his name and his memory, Wings of Eagles.
There was something about Joseph that people just were drawn to. It was really odd because I could be walking with the kids and people, it was like young children and the elderly, it seemed like, were really drawn to Joseph. And people would walk like across the street just to come and look at him or touch him and say, "Oh, he was such a... I saw him from across the street. He's such a cute little boy. I just had to come over and look at him and talk to him." I mean, and then Joseph was also different in the way that he was a very giving and compassionate child from a very young age. He was very giving and compassionate. One time my sister came to town and she wanted to take the kids out Christmas shopping. And I couldn't go with them because I was at work. So I gave Joseph $5 and Mary $5. And my niece and my nephew each $5 so that they could go Christmas shopping. And this was in the middle 80s. So of course, you know, times had changed. $5 was a lot of money for a little kid. And I remember my sister coming back from town and me asking, what the kids get? And she said, well, Joseph didn't get anything because they were going into a store and there was a homeless man on the street, and Joseph had given him his $5 that he was to go shopping with because he said that the homeless man needed it more than he did. So, I mean, that was just the type of person Joseph was. When there was anybody that was injured, he would always go find help or find relief, and I don't know, he just was a good person. Right after he turned 8 years old, Joseph started having headaches, and he started losing his appetite, and he wasn't sleeping all that well. And this was unusual for him. Not saying that he was always extremely healthy, because he had his health problems, but because he had asthma when he was growing up. But this was out of character for him, because Joseph was like one of those kids that get up at 5 a.m., run, think, work all day, play all day, and go to bed at like 8:30. I mean, he just never ran out of energy. And he was a big eater because he was a husky boy and very stocky. And so he just never ran out of energy. But over the 6 months when he started complaining about headaches, and then he'd get these oddball fevers during the day. You know, he'd spike a fever, 102.1, and then by evening it was gone. You know, it was just things like that. So I started taking him to his pediatrician about once a month, saying, you know, there's something wrong, you know, but it was none of these, really anything specific that I could put my finger on. So the doctor said, he goes, well, I don't really know what's wrong with him. He goes, but let's take a blood test just to make sure that it's nothing serious. So told me to bring him back the next morning early because Joseph was supposed to fast. He wasn't supposed to eat anything before the blood test. So I believe I took him to the lab at the Mangrove Medical Group at about 8 a.m. in the morning. I was saying, gosh, I hope he doesn't have something like mono. And I got to thinking about, or maybe diabetes, you know. Alberto Jr. called from the house going, Georgia, the doctor's on the phone. So it was 6:20 at night. And so even though this was the summer, it was still really nice outside. It was just like, whoa, doctors don't call you. You know, they don't call you at night. You know, so I went running down the hill and I grabbed the phone, and Dr. Johnson said, well, Joseph's urine test came out clean, but his blood test, he looks like he has leukemia. And I was like, oh my gosh, you know, leukemia. And I had only actually heard of a couple other people in my life, 2 or 3 other people in my life, having leukemia, didn't exactly know what it was, knew it was related to cancer, sounded serious. So I told Dr. Johnson, can you hold on for a second? And I yelled down the hall to my husband, Alberto. I said, Alberto, pick up the extension. The doctor wants to tell you something. And then I got back on the phone with the doctor and I said, could you repeat to my husband what you just told me? And he told my husband, it looks like Joseph has leukemia.
For a little over 17 months, the Alvarez family fought bravely on through the horrors of chemotherapy, radiation, and an excruciating bone marrow transplant. But sadly, the battle ended on July the 28th, 1991. Joseph died in his own home, on his mother's pillow, with both parents by his side. Joseph's life ended, but his inspiration lives on.
Between the time that Joseph relapsed, in fact, it happened immediately on our ride home from UC Davis, that day that they said that Joseph had 0 chance for survival. It even said it on, I have it on a document, that Joseph has 0% chance of survival. You ever see that about one of your kids? It was horrid. I mean, documentation. Well, during our stays at the different hospitals, we realized, because we were getting a huge amount of financial and emotional support from friends, families, people that we didn't even know that helped our family financially and emotionally through this situation, our crisis situation. I mean, Joseph didn't go without anything. All of our bills were always paid. You have to remember, we had 2 households, one in Chico and one for 4 months in Palo Alto. And all of that was paid by the generosity of people that just cared about us. But that wasn't what we saw, which was normal to other people who were in the same situation that we were in. So after Joseph died, and then I had Angela, and I got my strength back, my husband and I got our strength back, we decided that we were going to help other people in Joseph's memory the same way that we were helped, and that we were going to call it Wings of Eagles, the Joseph Alvarez Organization for Seriously Ill Children. And we founded Wings of Eagles in June of 1993, really not knowing what we were doing, but we knew that we wanted to help families that were in this terrible crisis that we had been in. We were a middle-income family. We did not. We applied for services, but we did not qualify for any services. So we were stuck in between that rock and the hard place. We weren't low income, so we didn't get any services, but we weren't rich enough to pay for everything. It was because of the generosity of our friends, family, and community that we were able to survive that financial storm that we went through. So that's what we based our thoughts of what we wanted Wings of Eagles to be that safety net for families that had no other resource like we had. And so we started Wings of Eagles, the Joseph Alvarez Organization, in June of 93. Our first fundraiser was October of 93. We put on a Mexican dinner. We raised $1,800 for our first fundraiser. We were ecstatic, and we helped one family that year. We helped them save their house, and we gave them a really great Christmas because they fell behind on their mortgage payments, and they were about to lose their home. And we were able to pay their mortgage and also give them gift certificates to the Chico Mall so that they could do a really nice Christmas for their family. Well, the second year, we raised $5,000. Wings of Eagles raised $5,000, and we helped 5 families that year. The third year, we raised $15,000, and we helped more families. So since that time, since 1993, Wings of Eagles has raised well over $3 million and helped over 1,000 families.
Wow.
That have children with cancer, and not only cancer, but children with other serious life-threatening illnesses. And it was all because of one little boy. He was special. I learned so much from him. I was not the same person after Joseph passed away because I had learned so much from him. I had learned that there was more important things in life than material things. Your most important things in your life are your children and your family, things that are so irreplaceable that you do not even realize that until it happens. We're here for a reason. The reasoning isn't just for our own selfish needs. The reason is to help others. I went through a tragic time in my life to learn that lesson, but we're here to help others. You know, you're supposed to be giving and loving. Jesus.
Well, if you've enjoyed this story as much as I have, and you'd like to help Wings of Eagles, contact them via their website at www.wingsofeagles.org. Stay tuned for our next cancer story. Well, here we are at Butte Creek Country Club in Chico, California, second home of Debbie Maduris, championship golfer and cancer survivor. I met here with Debbie, her sister Lynn, and her mother, all cancer survivors. Today, Debbie is hosting a tournament called Swing for a Cure for the early detection and prevention of cancer. Come with me today and meet the whole family as we discuss cancer and the way in which they as a family dealt with it and won as a team. So let's go tee off now. Okay, so we've got you, we've got your husband, we've got one of your sisters, your youngest sister, we've got your mom,
yeah,
we've got your grandmother.
Yes.
And I mean, there's not that many more that we could really.
No, and actually, if we go back in time, my dad's sister, so my aunt, had lymphoma 20-something years ago.
Wow.
And she lived in Fresno, and she went through chemo, and she did pass away due to it, I think. But it's just like we didn't know much about it then, but now we're kind of experts going through this whole process. And radiation is a daily treatment, usually for like 6 weeks for a lot of people.
But when you went through that, did you lose your hair and
Yeah.
go through the whole scenario?
Yeah, so I had my surgery December 20th. 3 weeks later, I started chemo. And Dr. Keats said, you know, there's a fair chance you'll lose your hair. Don't cut it off now, but about the 2 to 3 week mark, you know. So then you start shedding, you know, and it doesn't.
Now, how does that feel? I mean, I see these movies in the, you know, that's all I've seen. I don't have an experience like you do, and they're in the shower,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and
and
the
it
hair
starts to
is,
fall out.
I mean, emotionally, how do you?
You know, I have to say, of all the stuff I've been through, the hair was just like a non-issue to me.
Right.
I knew it was possible, so it started shedding. And my friend Jane, who you just met, called me when I was diagnosed, and she's a real upbeat, you know, grab it and run with it type of person. So when she went through it, she said, Debbie, she goes, I'm driving down the Esplanade one day, and I go to run my hand through my hair, and a whole clump comes out, because she went through chemo too. She goes, I rolled down the window and threw it out, and there was a car going next to me, and the person was just like, ah! So when mine started to come out, I dealt with that for a couple of days, and I thought, that's enough of that. So
Right.
we go out in the backyard, and we had an electric razor thing, and I had my husband shave my head. I didn't have a mirror out there or anything, and my hair looked pretty much like this. So he shaves it, and I'm bending over, and he looks down, and he goes, oh, looks like a squirrel died or something on the ground here. I said, I know, but how do I look? And he goes, I think you look younger.
Bless his heart.
What a nice thing to say.
That was good.
And when I first came back out to play golf here, I play on Saturday mornings with 3 girlfriends. And I show up with my baseball cap on and no hair. And they had all gone and gotten baseball caps.
Oh.
And they wore them. And I have a picture of us, too. We're all there with our carts. They've got their hats on. They never wear baseball caps. And I was just blown away. I mean, it was just that kind of little thing that helps you, you know, like some kids will say, well, I'm going to shave my head because my friend lost his hair. They wore baseball caps, and it was cool, and they've never worn them since.
Just prior to this tournament, I met with Debbie, Lynn, her sister, and her mother. and they all sat down and discussed with me their individual experience with cancer. I'd like to share that interview with you now. So here we have almost the whole family, but not quite. So what do we have here? Mom, which is your name?
Mom, Barbara.
Barbara?
Lynn?
Lynn?
Debbie?
Debbie, who's missing?
Carol?
Carol. We'll see Carol later on. We'll cut her into this. So this is a pretty unique family. You have no brothers.
No.
So just 3 sisters and mom. Dad has passed away. Yes. Okay, so out of 4 of you, we have 3 of you that have experienced cancer.
And I've done it twice. I'm an overachiever.
You're an overachiever.
And Mom feels like she's an underachiever and doesn't
I feel like
doesn't
an
feel she
underachiever.
belongs in the category.
And in fact, we had to pull you into this, didn't we? Come on, Mom, sit down.
Well, I didn't have to go through everything, just lumpectomy and...
Okay, so, but the first interchange with cancer.
Mom's mother.
Okay, so your mom
At age 88, I had a double mastectomy.
at age
No
88.
treatment.
Wow.
So we just felt anyone that gets to 88 is going to have something, and they didn't do any treatment, and she lived almost 92, so the doctor wasn't concerned about her having to have treatment.
No chemo?
No.
Nothing.
And the doctor, she had a very slow, I think, slow-growing cancer,
Yeah.
and the doctor said she's likely not going to die from this, and she didn't actually die from that either. So when people would say, do you have a family history? I said, well, if my grandmother passed away at 87, no, I wouldn't have a family history, but she lived to 88 and she got breast cancer. But it's pretty hard to link that to younger cancers.
Is it genetic? Is this cancer genetic that's gone through your whole
Not the
family?
gene that they can measure right now.
Okay.
We've been genetically tested. Mine was negative. Debbie chose to do it as well, and it was negative, of course. And
It's called the BRCA1 and 2 test, and it tells you also if you have a predisposition, I believe, to ovarian cancer, which
Yes.
is kind of why you want to know if you're positive or not, because some people don't want to know. But if you have a history like this and you decide to check it, our thought was, well, I think we should know, and I think we should know for ourselves, our sister, our nieces, but some people would rather not know.
it's a very personal choice, but again, I think we felt the necessity to, especially when I got it the second time, I got tested. Actually, I got tested before then because of some ovarian issues, and it came back negative. So, but I don't know the statistics, but I believe it's not that many of breast cancer cases where it is a genetic link with the BRCA gene. So really, every woman has to be careful. It's not just those who, because I hear all the time, oh, we don't have any family history. And it's, well, neither did we. And then one day I got diagnosed, we had Grandma, and that was it.
So Grandma was first.
Yes.
And then Lynn, you were next.
I was next.
You were next in line. So how old were you at that time?
I was 42.
42. Any signs, any suspicions?
No, I did a routine breast exam, and honestly, there was a little heavenly intervention for me on this one because I went for mammograms routinely. I just had a physician exam, and I had just had a mammogram. And I was coming out of church one Sunday, the week before Christmas, in 2000 or 1999, no, 2000, I think it was. And I saw a woman coming in. They had moved out of town, and we waved and said hello. And I thought to myself, she's my age, and she had breast cancer this year. I really need to do a self-exam. And the first place I touched, I got a lump.
Really?
The first place I touched.
Oh.
And I think one of the things women try to comfort themselves with information that makes them think they don't have breast cancer. I had a round lump that was painful. It was movable. Those are
So
usually.
So as soon as you touched,
I knew it was about this size. It was very small. But I had all the signs of benign breast disease, not a cancerous tumor. But I went in and I made an appointment the next day. I went in, we watched it for a couple of weeks, and I had a biopsy, and the doctor called me back, and my husband was out of town. He was out back east on a business trip, and the doctor didn't want to tell me, but he was going on vacation. I said, you have to tell me. I said, you've met me enough times. I'm not going to fall apart if you tell me this. And so he told me over the phone. It came back and it was positive, and he was stunned.
He wasn't expecting that.
No, he wasn't expecting that. You don't want to hear you have cancer, but okay, you've heard it, so let's get real. That's realistic. What you don't want to then hear is that you have to have a double mastectomy and chemotherapy. Well, I had the double mastectomy, but didn't know about the chemotherapy. Yes, okay, I can deal with the double mastectomy. Then it's the chemo. It's like, well, you know what? As long as I'm living at the end of this, the chemo doesn't bother me, and losing my hair doesn't bother me. I had a hysterectomy too because of the aggressive nature of my cancer, and the drug they wanted to put me on required me to clearly not have working ovaries. In the end, those were probably all the things a woman worries about.
Right.
Losing her breasts, losing her female organs, and going bald.
You
But
faced all of them, and
Yeah.
Here we are.
It starts to be a step. I mean, you hear you have it, and you think, now that I've been through this with my husband and myself, and almost my husband again, it's like, okay, just let me have something I can deal with. I mean, you start to bargain in your mind, like, if you've never been through this, you think, oh my God, cancer, it's just a terrible thing. Well, yeah, it's not so great. But you start to realign your thinking, and you go, okay, just give me something I can deal with. And then tell me what it is I have to do, and I will do it. So in my case, it was like, okay, am I going to have a lumpectomy? Because when you first hear it, you don't know any of this.
Right.
You know, is it in my lymph nodes? You don't know that till surgery and a week later. So they do the surgery, they close you up. If they test your lymph nodes and it was positive, you go back. Okay. So I remember the day that I heard it wasn't in there. I mean, it was just, okay, that's great. Okay, I've had a double mastectomy, fine. I'm going to go through chemo. I'm going to lose my hair. And the hair thing, I think Lynn will agree, to the women out there that are worried about it, it was no big deal.
It was beyond no big deal, and Debbie's hair was short. Debbie's hair was shorter than mine is now when she lost it. Mine was down to here. And I would say it was the single most liberating, and it was brown, mind you.
And it wasn't naturally brown.
I took a lot of work.
And I remember going back to Guatemala the first time out because we were involved in this program in Guatemala that we co-founded for education, and we went back to the post office, and the gentleman recognized my husband, and he looked at me, and I said in Spanish, well, I look a little different. I had chemotherapy last year, and I lost all my hair. So he looked at me, and he winked, he goes, oh, so that's the real color. And so I found it to be all of it, because again, those are the things women worry about the most, and none of it makes a difference, because my contribution to the world, or my sense of femininity, has absolutely nothing to do with any one of those items, or all of them combined, too. Yeah. My husband doesn't love me less, and I'm really lucky. My husband doesn't love me less, he loves me more. I love him more because I saw him come into this in a way that, and I shared that moment with you, the thing I missed the most about chemo. I called them my spa days, because it was the only time I got to sit down. I got put in a recliner. They put warm blankets on me. My husband would go out and get me like a frappuccino, and they'd give me something that made me sleepy. And then I call it the soundtrack of your experience. On my iPod, I put together just music with no words, just instrumentals of things that were very calming to me. And every week I plugged that in. I fell asleep to it, I woke up to it. And when I would wake up to my husband sitting about 6 feet away from me, just quietly reading. And to me that exemplified his support of me. I used to laugh with the nurses, and I said, let me get this straight, because the first drugs I had, they had to wear protective clothing. and they were real tough drugs. And I said, let me get this straight, because I had a port in my chest. You have to put on protective clothing, and you're going to stick it right into my bloodstream. And I laugh. But what it did also is what you have to be good in that profession is you have to be our Sister Carol, who is a dialysis nurse and who deals with patients on that same level of care, with patients who are often
very
equally
sick.
as sick.
Yeah.
And that's where we relied on her, because I would say to the nurses, I said, boy, do I appreciate my sister and what she does for her
because
patients.
is she feeling left out of all of this? Does
Well,
she
this
almost?
is what
If
said,
you're
Yeah.
But does she worry about it? I don't know. Does she ever say anything to you? She can't.
No,
well, we
but
interviewed
think.
her, and she said she doesn't worry about
I
it.
don't-
And right now we'll cut away to exactly what she did say during our interview and see.
My name is Carol Elwood.
And you're the sister of, what are your sisters?
Debbie Medeiros and Lynn Waspy.
Okay, now, this story, of course, is about cancer, but you yourself don't have cancer, but you've been tested for it. Is that correct?
Yes, I've had various tests. They thought at one point I had uterine cancer, and I did have a complete hysterectomy. Turned out to be okay.
Wow.
And I've had several breast biopsies.
Oh, so do you feel like it's kind of like Russian roulette with all this cancer in the family? And
A little bit. I mean, I'm at this point the only female, because my mother and grandmother both have had breast cancer, and my 2 sisters. So my odds are not as good as they could be, but there's not a whole lot you can do about it other than to be vigilant with your testing.
So your annual tests? Right.
Yes, at least.
Can I ask a question? Let's have the rubber really hit the road now. If you could live your life having not gone through the last couple of years, and this is very difficult because how could you have?
Yeah.
But hypothetically, would you have traded the experience? And I ask this, Lynn, because it almost sounded to me through your emails, through the email that you sent me and our conversations on the telephone, that this has almost enriched your life.
I would absolutely positively not have missed this for anything at this point. The first time out opened my mind a certain way. After that point, my husband and I started again going, we went down to Guatemala, and we found a kind of a calling to work with indigenous children down there to provide them an education. And interestingly, how that plays out in the second round of cancer. In the second round of cancer, the first thought I had was, if I'm gone, who's going to do this? Who's going to do this for these kids? Like any mother would. I don't have my own children, but like any mother would. And so that gave me motivation. But that was a product of kind of the outcome of the first cancer. I would not know. I'm a different person, and in probably all the best ways, and in many ways it's been the most liberating experience of my life, and I think will continue to define. The biggest challenge is to continue to keep that sense of liberation, that sense of
so you don't get back into the same old plodding through life and just, you know,
getting
so
worried
caught
about
up
the small stuff, and no, I mean, again, it's addressing the. There are many other things in my life to be afraid of, I suppose, but I fear them less because I've addressed the things that probably I was most afraid of. And in the life, in your life, that as I realized how much time was spent on things that didn't add to the quality of my life. They were filler, and
have they gone by the wayside?
Either they've gone by the wayside or the way I look at them is different.
I think that's what your perspective changes.
So it seems to me what I'm hearing as a summary on all of this is that you have learned how to take it one step at a time and to conquer that mountain as you climb it.
Yeah.
But don't anticipate a mountain that's not there.
Right.
And leave yourself open to the fact that there can be really great lessons, great joy, and you know, I think pretty much everyone who goes through difficult things finds that there's some silver lining, and I think I entered into mine just knowing there is a silver lining, and the excitement is, what is it? Where am I going to find it? And so for me, the second time around was very much a different one, even though it was a much more serious experience than the first time around.
I came across that little card I kept for you while you're going through your weekly.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know why I drew it as a hill, and treatment 1, 2, 3, and you get to the
up
top.
the hill.
You have to say that every week for the 16 treatments, I would come home and there would be a rose representing that week's treatment, and started with one rose for the first treatment and then had the one little notch up the hill. Then the second week,
Did Mom do this?
Yes,
Mom did this?
she'd come down while I was at treatment. The second week it was 2 roses, and up the second notch. She used the same card every week, and the new one. And I came home and the last one was 16 roses, and it's like,
It's over.
Yeah.
it was really, really a great way to measure it. In the last 30 days, my husband bought me a laminated, empty 30-day calendar because he knows I like to count them off. And I draw in the pictures like I drew in when my last eyelash flew out. And I drew in when we went to tea to celebrate, because we celebrated, ooh, yippee, we're going to go for tea because I'm having a mastectomy. And then we did it because I'm going to start chemo. And, ooh, I lost my hair, let's go for tea. And we finally celebrated my 50th birthday by going for tea.
I hope that the experience of these wonderful, beautiful people have been as uplifting to you as they have been to me. And remember, we win as a team.
Debbie, it's your big day?
It is. It's here.
Attendance is
Huge.
fantastic.
Huge.
Sold out?
Sold out.
Sold out. Wow. Well, we'll be following you on the course as you swing for a cure.
Please stay with us as Cancer Stories continues. The diagnosis of cancer can, for many people, mean nothing less than a death sentence. And it's true, for some, it may be the time in life to begin preparing for those final days. And yet for others, it can in fact be good news. Now, I know that sounds ironic, but I say that from my own experience because, you see, I too have had my own abnormal test results. And for me, it was a real wake-up call. I had to stop and think about those things that were the most important to me in life. And that's always good news. It can also begin a series of events that can change your entire life for the better. And that's the purpose of our series of cancer stories. So today, come with me and meet a most amazing woman who is in fact also my mother-in-law. Her name is Kay Myers Carson. So let's go and meet her now. Let's begin our story by placing it within the context of Kay's entire life. Born in South Carolina in the year 1925, Kay entered the world in an era of unprecedented change. The 1920s were dubbed the Roaring Twenties by a society that were truly living the American dream. A time of national prosperity and invention marked the opening years of Kay's life. Women were now national voters and considered equal in the workforce. Television and radio were in their infancy and impacting the lives of millions of individuals throughout the country. But in the last few months of 1929, when Kay was a mere 4 years old, everything changed. The stock market, which had been riding high for years, suddenly collapsed, leaving America in a state of unprepared shock. The Great Depression which followed left millions of men, women and children homeless and hungry, living in makeshift shanties and attending the long lines of charity soup kitchens. The deplorable state of national bankruptcy continued throughout the 1930s into the mid-1940s. This was the backdrop for Kay's formation years. And just when it seemed the world could get no darker, America was introduced into the horrors of World War II via the bombing of Pearl Harbor. Kay, now aged 16, continued to attend high school preparatory to her college years. But again, life took another unexpected turn. And at the tender age of 18, Kay entered a whirlwind romance with a dashing Navy lieutenant by the name of Dick Myers, who somehow managed to uncharacteristically sweep the level-headed teenager off her feet. The two were married in the midst of those war-torn years, interrupting Kay's educational pursuits and leaving her at home alone, while Lieutenant Myers shipped out to face the horrors of war yet again. So let's head on up to Kay's now, but along the way I'd like to continue the story. After the war, Kay and her husband Dick resumed their life and later on had 2 small boys, Richard and Larry. But Kay also wanted to pursue her education, which she had to put on pause during the war. And so she attended Winthrop University and gained a Bachelor of Arts degree with an English major. But even that wasn't enough for the ambitious and intelligent young Kay. She then went on to the University of San Francisco and gained a Bachelor of Science degree in Human Relations and Organizational Management. Really something, isn't it? But in the midst of her very busy and productive life, in the year 1962, tragedy struck. Her husband and childhood sweetheart, Dick Myers, was struck down in his prime at the age of 37 dying of an unexpected heart attack, leaving Kay's well-organized world and heart in a shambles. But true to form, she battled on, raising her sons and working until she finally remarried Joe Carson, a graduate of the University of California, Berkeley, a successful engineer in the year 1968. Life was full and happy during this time of adventure and world travel, until Kay began to experience unusual headaches, which continued to increase in intensity over a period of some 7 years, during which the doctors and specialists tried to convince the now middle-aged woman that the illness was, in fact, all in her mind. But Kay knew better. Now on the verge of collapse, she was finally diagnosed with a life-threatening pneumonia, or brain tumor. But if that wasn't enough, the operation left Kay with Bell's palsy, resulting in the entire collapse of the left side of her beautiful and lively face. To this day, Kay has no use of the left side of her mouth, and is also permanently deaf in her left ear. But Kay, being the determined fighter that she is, pushed herself through rehabilitation and continued to give her life in service to her fellow human beings. At this time, in her late 70s, she left Napa and moved to Paradise, California to be closer to her family, where she continued her volunteer work on the Paradise Symphony Society board. And at the age of 80, she put on a uniform and functioned as a volunteer in the Paradise, California Police Service. In 2007, Kay's still active and fruitful life hit yet another brick wall. She began feeling less than her normal jubilant self, and was at last diagnosed with AML, acute myelogenous leukemia. Now, in her own words, Kay will share with you the story of the most difficult battle of her life, cancer. Could you tell us a little bit about your experience with cancer?
Yes, toward the beginning of 2007, I didn't feel as well as I normally did, but I had not the least idea why. On a Monday night in 2007, I went to our local emergency room and was diagnosed with cellulitis and sent home with an antibiotic. The following night, I returned to the emergency room only to be diagnosed with acute myelogenous leukemia. What a surprise. I was transferred to the University of California in San Francisco after a couple of days at Feather River Hospital. And what a story. There, the chemo was administered after the prognosis that there was a 50% chance that I couldn't survive the chemo. I did that, and then all of my vital systems started to fail, my heart, my lungs, my gallbladder. And again, the prognosis was extremely poor. I was not expected to live. But here I am in August of 2008, a real testimony to the glory, the power, and the grace of God.
Amen. I know you certainly surprised the doctors through all of this. I talked with Dr. Marsh from Feather River Hospital, and this is what he had to say.
So has she surprised you?
Well, certainly she did. First of all, the treatment that she got at UCSF was very aggressive. Although she had some setbacks and complications, she survived through it. That is usually not very common, is unheard of. the way that she went through all the, complications.
So, tell us a little bit about your furry friend there.
This is my little love, Béni, which is French for blessing. There are many moments when I look for the antonym to that word, but she really is a joy.
What are some of the lessons that you've learned through all of this?
Well, I've learned that there's more than one way to spell patient. One is P-A-T-I-E-N-T, which I've been for some time now, and the other is P-A-T-I-E-N-C-E. I've never been long on patients because I always have a lot of places to go and a lot of things to do, but I'm slowly learning that patience is a necessary part of one's life.
I know what you mean. I have the same problem, but I hope I don't have to go through everything that you've gone through to learn my lessons. Tell me some of the things that you found helpful.
Well, the Lord, of course, has blessed me with a much longer lifespan than I had anticipated a year ago. I'm blessed with many, many friends who have prayed. I've been lifted in prayer many, many times, and obviously the Lord has answered those prayers.
I'd like to add to that. As your family, we were told on several occasions that you only had a matter of days to live, and in some cases, only hours, and yet here you still are. Anyway, please continue.
After my diagnosis with acute myelogenous leukemia, I was transferred from Feather River Hospital in Paradise, where I live, to the University of California, San Francisco Hospital, and was there for almost 3 months. Following that, I was transferred to St. Mary's for acute rehab. Coincidentally, my first son was born at St. Mary's, where they no longer have an OB/GYN unit.
At this rate, you'll probably outlive your son, but tell us a little bit about the treatment that you received while you were in those hospitals.
Well, I cannot say enough good things about the staff at UCSF nor at St. Mary's. They were all wonderful. And when I started participating in the clinical trial at Stanford, I found the research team there to be very cooperative. I have to fly from my home at about departing about 9 o'clock in the morning, and we return home by 5 in the evening. So it's a long day at Stanford, and the staff there are very cooperative in adjusting their schedule to fit mine because they know I have a flight down and a flight back home.
Let's talk about those flights. Angel Flight, what a wonderful service. In fact, I think we'll even take a break here and go and have a look at the last Angel Flight that you had and meet the pilot and your son Richard.
Well, this is our Angel Flight. We're on our way to Stanford like we usually do on Fridays. It's a real blessing to have a pilot fly us down. It would be impossible to drive. So it's one of many blessings for Mom.
And the pilots, I'm not sure how many there are. There's probably 300 in California volunteer their time and their treasures and their aircraft, if that isn't one of their treasures, to accomplish the task.
Wow, and it's all volunteer?
All volunteer.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
How long have you been doing it?
I'm just closing out my 2nd year, and I've on about my 70th mission.
Wow.
Yeah, I've done 31 so far this year.
Wow,
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I do about 1 a week.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
With Angel Flight, pilots donate their time, their aircraft, and their fuel so that mission recipients can focus on their condition and families without even having to worry about how to pay for the flight.
For more information, see their website at www.angelflight.org. So tell me a little bit about your local hospital, Feather River Hospital.
Because I need someone locally to monitor me while I'm taking the trial drug, I also am lucky to have the Feather River Cancer Center and the staff there, Dr. Maj, who is my physician, and Lori, who is his assistant, as well as everyone else. They're always very cheerful and very cooperative.
That is so true. They've been wonderful, especially Dr. Maj, who took a break from his very busy schedule to have an interview with me. And while we're meeting him, let's also meet the charge nurse that took care of you the last day that you had in the hospital, when you in fact had double pneumonia, and again, we thought you only had a matter of hours to live.
I'm a nurse on the surgical unit, and Kay came out from ICU after being there for about, I think, 3 weeks, and she spent another 3 weeks out with us, maybe even 4. It was a good thing she came out from ICU because she was getting better, but she was still so medically fragile. I mean, we all felt like we walked on a tightrope with her. Anything could change at any minute. But the thing with Kay, you only had to look at her and know she was a fighter. You know, and when we get patients like that, I've been a nurse for a long time, but when we get patients like that, you know, you want to fight for them and with them. And that was how we all felt about Kay. You know, she was pale, she had tubes everywhere, she looked sick, really, really sick, but you only had to look in her eyes and you could see, you know, she still had things to do, she still had stuff to say, people to see, and she was going to fight. And we did that with her, and when I saw her, I was here the day she was discharged in one of her little cute pink gowns, and when I saw her roll down the hallway, I mean, it was like we all just got a little teary, because it was a pretty special thing, and we all admired it. It was a pleasure and an honor to take care of a woman like that, and I think most of us felt that way.
So I met with Kay in about May of 2007. At that time, she came in with severe fatigue, and the blood tests were very in a bad position. At that time, a bone marrow biopsy confirmed the diagnosis of acute myeloid leukemia, which is a deadly disease, especially understanding her age at that time was 82. It's a really deadly and serious condition, and the treatment options are unfortunately very limited for that age. It's a deadly disease, and especially her age made it very difficult. We never thought when I met her in May that she's going to be around for maybe a few months. And that's what the standard has been, and that's what we have seen in patients with that age and that disease, the acute aggressive myeloid leukemia with bad cytogenetics that makes it really resistant to standard treatment, and she pulled it through, and she has been, and the most recent laboratory that I have seen, they all look perfectly good. She had
Still looking great.
They're still looking great. She had a bone marrow biopsy, no evidence of cancer, and that is really amazing, and it's blessing that we see something like this. Mm-hmm. It's not that we could see these things at a daily basis. This is really uncommon, and she has been great and has taught us a lot of things that we never thought we could learn.
That's wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience with us today. And is there anything that you'd like to say in closing?
I would like to close with a final thank you to the hundreds, perhaps thousands of people all over the world who have prayed for me. Thank you so much.
And I'd like to thank you for joining us here today, and I hope in some way it's been a blessing to you. I think the experience that I've learned the most through all of this with Kay is that you should never give up hope. No matter what the prognosis, just keep fighting. Don't give up. And these stairs here behind me represent that to me, almost like an icon. You see, Kay's bedroom is at the top of those stairs. And she was determined to go to bed every night in her own bed, even though it meant climbing up this long flight of stairs. She could have slept down here. There are 2 more bedrooms down here. But no, that's just not her character. So, sometimes she had to crawl up those stairs. Sometimes she had to come down on her backside. But it was her determined purpose to continue on in life. And that is what these stairs meant to her. So in closing, I'd just like to say to you, don't give up hope. And the Lord bless you as you fight your battle with cancer.